Hey everyone, welcome back to Buried Truth Project. Today we're diving into one of the most chilling stories in American criminal history, the story of H. Holmes, considered America's first documented serial killer. In the 1890s, during the Chicago World's Fair, Holmes built a hotel that was actually a torture chamber designed specifically for murder. He confessed to killing 27 people, but the actual number may be over 200. This isn't just a story about a killer. This is about a psychopath who built an entire building for the sole purpose of trapping and murdering his victims. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our deep dives into history's darkest moments. Alright, let's jump in. Let's start with who H. Holmes really was, because the man behind the monster had been lying and scheming his entire life. H. Holmes wasn't even his real name. He was born Herman Webster Mudgett in 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. From childhood, Holmes showed signs of being different. He was intelligent, charming, and a compulsive liar. He would lie even when the truth would serve him better, just for the pleasure of deceiving people. As a child, Holmes was fascinated by death and anatomy. According to some accounts, local bullies once forced him to touch a human skeleton in a doctor's office as a prank. Instead of being terrified, Holmes became fascinated. He would later claim this experience sparked his interest in medicine and death. Holmes attended the University of Michigan Medical School, where he had access to cadavers for study. But here's where his criminal behavior began. Holmes would steal corpses from the medical school, disfigure them, and then claim they were victims of accidental death to collect on life insurance policies he'd taken out using fake identities. Think about that. While still in medical school, Holmes was already using dead bodies to commit insurance fraud. This wasn't a man who gradually became evil. He was calculating and criminal from the very beginning. After graduating in 1884, Holmes moved around the country, leaving a trail of fraud, theft, and mysterious disappearances wherever he went. He married 3 different women, never divorcing any of them, committing bigamy multiple times. He abandoned his first wife and child without explanation. He was a con artist, always looking for his next scheme. In 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago and took a job at a drugstore in the Englewood neighborhood. The drugstore was owned by a woman named Mrs. Holton, whose husband had recently died. Holmes was charming, hardworking, and convinced Mrs. Holton to let him buy the pharmacy on an installment plan. Shortly after the agreement was made, Mrs. Holton mysteriously disappeared. Holmes told neighbors she'd moved to California. He took over the pharmacy completely and never made a single payment. Mrs. Holton was almost certainly his first Chicago victim, though her body was never found. Now here's where the story becomes truly terrifying. In 1887, Holmes bought a vacant lot across the street from the pharmacy. He announced he was going to build a hotel to accommodate visitors to the upcoming 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, the Chicago World's Fair that was expected to bring millions of visitors to the city. But Holmes wasn't building an ordinary hotel. He was designing and constructing a murder factory. Holmes hired different construction crews for different parts of the building, constantly firing workers and hiring new ones so no single crew would understand the building's full layout. He frequently changed architects and builders, claiming he wasn't satisfied with their work. The real reason was to prevent anyone from realizing what he was actually building. The building became known as the World's Fair Hotel, but later it would be called the Murder Castle. And that name was terrifyingly accurate. Here's what made the building so horrifying. The first floor was retail space, including Holmes's pharmacy, completely normal. But the second and third floors were a maze of death traps designed specifically for murder. The building had over 100 rooms, but many of them were windowless, soundproof chambers. Some rooms had gas lines that Holmes could control from his bedroom, allowing him to asphyxiate guests while they slept. Other rooms had walls and floors designed to be airtight, creating suffocation chambers. There were doors that opened to brick walls, stairways that led nowhere, hallways that dead-ended, secret passages behind walls, trapdoors and floors that dropped victims into chutes leading to the basement. The entire second and third floors were designed to confuse and trap victims. But the basement was where the true horror was located. Holmes had equipped it like a medieval torture chamber mixed with a medical laboratory. There were dissection tables, surgical instruments, a crematorium for burning bodies, and pits of lime for dissolving flesh from bones. There were stretching racks, rooms with gas pipes, and a massive furnace large enough to cremate a human body. Holmes also had large vaults that he claimed were for storing valuable items for guests. In reality, they were airtight chambers where he would lock victims and listen to them suffocate while he worked in his pharmacy below. The building opened in time for the 1893 World's Fair, and Chicago was flooded with visitors. Young women came from all over America, looking for jobs and adventure at the fair. Holmes specifically targeted these women. They were far from home, often traveling alone, and many people didn't know they were in Chicago. Holmes's method was sickeningly simple and effective. He was handsome, well-dressed, articulate, and charming. He would meet young women at the fair or through newspaper advertisements seeking employees for his pharmacy or hotel. He would offer them jobs or inexpensive rooms. Many were desperate and grateful for his apparent kindness. Once these women were living in his hotel or working for him, Holmes would seduce them, gain their trust, and convince them to take out life insurance policies with him as the beneficiary. Then, when he'd extracted everything he could from them financially, he would murder them. Some victims were gassed in their sleep. Others were locked in soundproof rooms and left to suffocate. Some were dropped through trapdoors into the basement where Holmes would torture, dissect, or kill them. He treated murder like a science experiment, showing no emotion or remorse. But Holmes wasn't just killing. He was profiting from the murders in multiple ways. First, he collected on the life insurance policies. Second, he would strip the flesh from some victims' bodies and sell the skeletons to medical schools, claiming they were legally obtained anatomical specimens. Third, he would sell organs and body parts to medical researchers. Holmes had turned murder into a profitable business operation. The World's Fair Hotel was essentially a human slaughterhouse. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. Holmes had help. He employed several accomplices who knew what was happening but participated anyway. His janitor, Patrick Quinlan, helped dispose of bodies. Various associates helped Holmes move bodies, clean up crime scenes, and maintain the building's deadly mechanisms. The 1893 World's Fair lasted 6 months and attracted over 27 million visitors. During this time, Holmes's hotel was busy with guests, and people were disappearing. But in the chaos of millions of visitors coming and going, nobody noticed the pattern. Young women would arrive in Chicago full of hope and simply vanish. H. Holmes, born Herman Webster Mudgett on May 16, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, is widely regarded as America's first serial killer. His infamous murder castle was a 3-story, block-long hotel at 63rd and Wallace Streets in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood. Constructed between 1887 and 1893 at a cost of approximately $100,000. Designed with over 60 rooms, it featured secret passages, trapdoors, soundproof bedrooms, gas chambers, an acid vat, a crematorium in the basement, and a chute leading to the basement dissecting table. Holmes confessed to 27 murders, but is suspected of up to 200 victims, primarily young women lured during the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, which drew 27 million visitors to Chicago. After the fair ended in October 1893, the hotel's occupancy plummeted. Holmes fled debts and murders, partnering with Benjamin Franklin Pitzel, a carpenter and conman, in a scheme for a $10,000 life insurance payout. Holmes convinced Pitzel to fake his death by burning a cadaver. Holmes collected partial insurance, but betrayed Pitzel's family. Holmes abducted and killed Pitzel's 3 children, 15-year-old Alice, 11-year-old Nellie, and 8-year-old son Howard. Howard was murdered October 25, 1894, in Indianapolis basement at 16th and Monroe Streets. Body dissolved in lime pit. Sisters suffocated November 1894 in Toronto basement at 59 St. Vincent Street. Bodies hidden in trunk under stove. Philadelphia Police Inspector Frank P. Kiiller, starting March 1895, tracked Holmes across 7 cities over 6 weeks with 15,000 miles traveled. Kiiller found Howard's remains April 12th. Girls May 5th to 7th, 1895, via Holmes' letters and postcards. Holmes arrested October 17, 1895, in Boston under alias Edward Hatch at Kindle and Stevens' store after Pitzel case extradition warrant. Chicago police raided Murder Castle October 23 to 31, 1895, finding bloodstains, torture devices, female clothing, Holmes' blueprints. Castle destroyed by fire August 19, 1895, ruins demolished. Site became Englewood Post Office in 1938. Extradited to Philadelphia. Holmes tried October-November 1895 for pitiful murder at City Hall courtroom. Prosecution led by D.A. Francis Grundy. Defense by Andy Masterson. Jury deliberated 4 hours. Convicted November 2, 1895, of first-degree murder. Holmes claimed innocence, alleging pitiful suicide. April 1896, Holmes' own story confessed 27 murders, detailed Castle horrors, recanted as sensationalism, exhibited psychopathic traits, charm, manipulation, bigamy, insurance frauds totaling over $50,000. Hanged at 10:13 a.m. at Moyamensing Prison, Philadelphia, before 200 witnesses. Neck didn't break, strangled 15 to 20 minutes. Body encased in 5-ton concrete at Holy Cross Cemetery, Yedden, Pennsylvania, to deter grave robbers. Holmes' case pioneered forensic detection, serial killer profiling, influenced tabloid journalism. Inspired Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera, Eric Larson's Devil in the White City. Symbolizes Gilded Age underbelly, victim vulnerability, lacks 19th century policing. Modern forensics trace to Holmes' era. Castle lore persists in ghost tours, media. The story of H. Holmes continues to fascinate and horrify, a chilling reminder of America's first serial killer.